All systems go. Clear for liftoff. What's up, everyone? Tyler Tamboline here, aka ToeTagginTambo, back for another edition of Leverage Lane, the PGA DFS edition here on the Ship It Nation YouTube station. We've got the Open, the final major of the season. My man Alex Blickle is here with me as always, and we're going to break down all things from a leverage perspective. We're going to talk about the common build, the chalk build, how we can leverage that, large field tournaments, the MME effect of the Millie Makers this week, weather, course fit, one and done, betting breakdown, and more. Alex, my friend, last major of the season is a good one, and I think there's a ton of strategy to be had here. We didn't even talk about the topic off the top. We were talking about so many different NFL things and future items and upcoming items that we're talking about, so I'm excited, man, but it's going to be a good one. How are you doing, my friend?
Dude, it's kind of crazy. Like it doesn't feel that long ago where we were debating whether or not to use Scottie Scheffler at the American Express, right? And feeling all the excitement for Augusta around the corner and all that stuff. And now here we are, several months later, more than several months even, and the major season's coming to an end. It's bittersweet, but as you said, like that also means football's right around the corner, and I couldn't possibly be more excited for this football season. But yeah, this Open Championship, I think I really like it from a DFS perspective. We're obviously going to talk a lot about the pricing, and I do think that the pricing makes the kind of like the puzzle that we're trying to solve a little bit frustrating to some degree, just because it's like everyone is going to have good lineups, and you like one of the things I really like doing in DFS is taking advantage of the mistakes that I think people are going to make. You kind of can't make mistakes this week. And so I think from that perspective, it's a little bit frustrating, but the rest of the Open Championship week and the process and, finding the right splits to look at, like I'm super excited for this week. I think it's going to be a really fun one. And I think that there are plenty of edges to be found.
I'm going to rope a bunch of topics in off of that actually right away, because I've got some good ones now that you said that. You remind me of something that we talked about for the DFS Mastermind Roundtable the other night on Monday. So I'm going to talk about the soft pricing in a second, but I'm going to give you a quick think fast. You're the ownership guru. Bang. Where do you got Scottie? Over, under 20% as of right now. And let's just use the $25 Millie Maker as an example.
Yeah, I got him over. Slightly over. Not like crazy over, but I just think like the way that I would put it is I don't think there are going to be a ton of people who make Scheffler their first click, but there are going to be a ton of people who go in and they're picking their favorite values, and they've got three guys in, and now they realize, oh my God, I have $10,000 remaining for my last three spots. I could go Tommy, Fitz, and Oberg, or I could go Scottie and now play, two of my favorite 8K guys or something like that. And so, I think they're just going to be, there are so many ways to play a Scottie lineup this week, whereas for most of the season, it's been like, okay, if you click Scottie, you're locked into this range, and there aren't that many guys you like down there. The way I put it on the show with Pat is like there are 27 guys at $7,000 or more. The vast majority of the field is 6K or lower, and a lot of those guys are really good golfers. They're really good players. They're in good form. They have good major championship history. Like there are just so many really high quality DFS plays that are $1,000, $2,000 too cheap, way down there. And that's going to make it really easy to fit Scottie.
And we're going to talk more about that later, because, the crazy thing about soft pricing. So that's what I want to start with my topic for this week. And you said it. So first of all, it's like the most talked about thing. It's on X. It's on all the podcasts, all the shows, everything else like that. And by the way, if anyone's joining us for the first time, I saw somebody say here, recent subscriber to this show after seeing you guys on PME. We'll talk more about making your lineup unique enough later. But the other shows, looking for picks and clicks, because they have to get out early in the week and get all that. We love that stuff too, but the picks we leave aside, and we don't care about the clicks. We put it out late Wednesday morning of the major, starting, late tonight, early morning tomorrow, to give you the most pertinent information based on your DFS lineups to help you win money. So that's really our focus here. But I will say the soft pricing is everywhere. And a couple things. If again, some people be common nature, or whatever you want to call it, second nature, or very common to hear this. But I will say, first of all, they got to fill milli makers and $5 500K prize pools with 50K up top with 117,000 entries. So we always get softer pricing at the majors. That's no surprise. Then you hear the next level. Oh, but this one's extra soft. Actually, the Open is very commonly the most soft because it's the last major of the season and does not have the same impact or excitement or hype as the Masters does to start the season. The same reason we don't see the $100 milli maker after the Masters even. It's only at the Masters, and then you don't see it at the other ones. There's a little bit less hype, but there's still a lot. But I will say, Alex, and again, I know everyone says this, but to each their own, my best success, and it's not because I ramp up and get ready for a major. Like, I wish it was that easy. I'd get ready for every week if that was the case. Every week just happens to be that I have more success at these majors. And I think because of the soft pricing. I explained this on Monday to people. I will say, people really struggle, man. You don't know the DMs I'm getting of like, oh, and somebody has it in here. Somebody just posted, and they could be joking because they put a laughing emoji. But like this, I've got like 3-4 DMs in the last 2 days about people like, can I just leave $5,000 on the table? I'm getting nervous about this, or I'm unsure, or whatever. So it's like, there's so many things that you can think about to do. But I actually think, yes, there's more variance when everyone can make an all-star lineup, and I get that. But I think it does two things. One, I think it congests the ownership. When we go to the common build today, it's very freaking simple. Yeah. Like, we'll build it in 2 seconds and be like, here's that. We might be able to predict the most duped build this week because the pricing is so soft. So that is important. Secondly, people overthink everything. And so, like, it's like you said, like, I got to pick this value, this value, this value. And then what does that leave me? Chalk, chalk, chalk. And they fill it out. Well, hopefully I'm different with the values, or I did use a couple of 6K guys, so I feel good about that. So I just think like there's so many areas left open with that and different ways to build and styles. And we'll talk about that more later when we get to leveraging the chalk build. But just any follow-up on that, I do think the important thing that I'm trying to point out with the soft pricing is that everybody is still dealing with the same thing. And so it's really more about what you do with it. And again, we're always trying to think moves ahead and play the actual game. It's like, to me, I'm actually fine when there's soft pricing. I think others really struggle with it.
Yeah, I'm torn because on the one hand, like I think the best part about soft pricing is that you're going to be able to pivot off of the chalk to other really, really good plays. Like sometimes when pricing is really tight, I actually think of last NFL season as like a really good example of this, where it was like they were probably 4 or 5 weeks in a row, kind of in the middle of the season, where pricing was so tight that like the only usable values were always going to be 20, 30% owned. It was like, well, these guys are also likely to fail. So do I pivot off of them by like using an even more likely to fail guy? Or like, it was hard to do. So finding pivots that you're actually confident in was really tough. But with this soft pricing, you're always going to be able to find pivots that are like 5% owned, 8% owned at any price range, except for like all the way up top, that you feel genuinely great about. And so that, I think, is the fun part of the soft pricing. I definitely want to ask you to kind of elaborate on why you think you've had success. But before that, do you want to kind of talk about that question about leaving money on the table? Because I do think it's something we're talking about.
Yeah, I'll answer the former first off, just because, like I said, to me, it's like pretty cut and dry. As somebody said, like this. Like, I truly believe, and I've said this a million times, you're an ownership guru, so you literally create your own ownership. I have a team that does it. We have a team over at Ship It Nation taking care of it. But I will say that NBA, all over the place. NFL, especially when contest sims came into play. Well, if nobody's going to play Saquon Barkley, I'm going to get like 30%. And then the contest sims got everybody 30%. And then Saquon Barkley is 30%. And now your ownership projections are garbage, which means your contest sims that you built off of those projections are probably not in good shape. So you don't actually have what you think you have. There's tons more to that. Obviously, you're just surface level here. What I think though, and to each their own with golf, but it's been pretty accurate. I know for yourself and for us over at Ship It Nation, and some weeks it's off, and that's just the nature of the beast. But I will say, I like it because we know in golf, you kind of just know. There's not another sport that I truly believe where you actually have, in baseball, even it's stuff. Okay, Judge is going to be owned, but where is the ownership on the rest of the Yankees actually going to go? And so on and so on and so forth for all these sports. I think the individual sports like golf, MMA, and NASCAR, I feel like the ownership is much more congregated and dialed into like we're within these closer ranges. It can get so much more accurate. And when I have that, and then I'm building against that accordingly, I'm actually building against what the real field is probably most likely going to do, because I have my own process. Most people don't have a process. We talk about all the time, renting one. Well, so if everyone says this and these are their rankings, I better just build that lineup. That's all baked into the projections. It's nothing against models. We talked about this on Monday night, but just to use this again with stat models. Oh, this place is going to play firm. Oh, really? I didn't see the 70,000 posts on X. Oh, this is not the same Royal Birkdale as 2017. Really? I didn't see the same 70,000 posts on X about that, or they hear it on the show. So we all know this. Oh, well, if they're saying that, I'm going to go look up my model and turn it to these stats. Okay, cool. Now everybody just did that. Now what do you have? The same stuff. And it's not that everybody has it because it's probably the right path, to be honest. Like, I get it. You understand how the course plays. You know golf courses better than most. I can't wait to hear your talks today around course fit and playing this course and things about it. But what I'm saying is a lot of that stuff ends up baked into the projections. And then it's baked into because of that's baked into the ownership, because the optimizers and stuff that are pushing it. So I guess what I'm saying is when you know what the field's going to do, and because I don't give a shit about picks and plays, I just land on what I land on up against that. The picks and plays are a result of the process. You will need the best golfers on your lineup on Sunday that score the most fantasy points to put you to the top to win a tournament. It's like beating a dead horse. I apologize, but I'm just saying that's really how I play. So I never have to think about all these other decisions. I just let that fall into place, get what I get, play the game accordingly. And I will say this to you folks out there that are like, oh, but picks. And if everyone knew golf picks, man, why do the people that bet 10 golfers on their card, or even the ones that bet 5 golfers on their card proper, like whatever, they play to win 7-1 or 8-1, pretty standard stuff. No shots. Nothing wrong with that. Why don't they hit 8 winners? Why is it so hard to hit the 8 winners then and break even and make money? Because it's so hard to predict golf. But DFS, when you play the game, you can actually focus on building the lineups. And if you know more about what the field is doing, that gives you a leg up going in. That's what I would answer the first part. And then we could talk more about the pricing and leaving money on the table, but goes with it a little bit.
It's interesting because I don't totally agree with the premise that super soft pricing concentrates ownership. Certainly on some players it does, like the most underpriced players. Yeah, they're going to like it's pretty clear to identify, pretty easy to identify the guys who are going to be 20, 25% on something like that. But you know, we've seen guys get to 40, 45, 50% in single entries. And I don't think that anyone's getting there this week, because what I would say is instead it like dilutes ownership on the secondary chalk guys and the other guys who are very good plays, but they're not quite as underpriced as some others. But it's, I get the idea. It's like you're essentially saying
too, because I want to give you, I mean, this will win it right here of like, not win it, but like say like my point made better. Mm-hmm. Is it's not necessarily going to be congested. It's not like we're going to get 5 guys over 30%. I'm not saying congested in that sense. So maybe the wrong use of the word. What I'm saying is very clearly, and I think this is like hard stop, no other answer to it, is if I asked you right now to predict the top 10 in ownership, I'm guessing you'd get like 7 to maybe all 10. Right. Correct. Like we know where it's going, which then we know what that leads to in certain builds, which then that, again, I still know we're up against something more accurate. So congested, probably the wrong word. That's more like the lazy weeks where you are getting, 3 golfers over 30%, a bunch in the 20s, and then it trickles off. And you're like, okay, everyone's landing on like Novak, Michael Kim, Jackson Koivin, and Ben Griffin. The JDC a few weeks ago. Like that was a very congested, lazy event. I get it, but it'll be more spread out because it's a major and softer pricing. But I'm saying if I ask you, an ownership guru or any top DFS player in PGA DFS right now, who the top 10 owned are going to be this week, they're going to get 7+ right based on today, anything. You didn't have to wait till today to know that Tom Kim and Siwoo Kim and these types of guys, Matty Fitz, etc. Like they're all going to be in the mix in some way, shape, or form. And then you do an even better job, and why the show is so important, of saying, well, not just that, but now let's talk about the combinations. And that's where it really matters more. Like you're going to say, oh, okay, I know who this guy is going to be in with. And that's another thing. So that's what I meant, is like, we have more knowledge. We're more comfortable, or more, we feel better about the accuracy of it. At least I do on a week like this, where I'm like, I actually feel really good about that. So I feel good about the lineups that I'm building going up against that.
Yeah, I like that explanation. I'd also say like it reminds me of the point I wanted to make earlier about like how pricing is different here than it was back at the PGA Championship, for example, because we also had really soft pricing then. But if you remember that week, like Nikolai Højgaard was 45% owned in single entries or something like that because he was $6,500 and he was like the clear underpriced guy.
Yeah.
Well, this week we have like 10 of those guys who are like as underpriced as Nikolai was that week. And so, yeah, instead of getting one at 45, we'll get 3 at 20 or 3 at 25, something like that. So yeah, I think that's a good point. And like I said, that also then means we not only do we know who the guys are who are going to get that much ownership, but because we know who's going to get that much ownership, we also know the guys who are protected and like they just don't really have a path to being more than 10%. And yet we think they're really good plays. And so I do want to talk about the leaving money on the table.
Yeah. Start it off.
So the first thing I'll say here is, like, as you know, I've been doing a lot of MLB roster construction analysis and just dropped some really, really cool NFL roster construction analysis. It's harder to do that for PGA because you don't get like any stacks or something, right? It's just, these are your 6 players. But one of the things that I did do for the PGA roster construction stuff was just look at salary owned. And basically, like, anything that leaves more than $500 on the table is just such a big time losing strategy. And the reason for this is because let's say you have $600 left on the table. For that to be the right way to go, for that to be the strongest lineup that you can build, you have to be able to look at every single player in your lineup, compare the guy that you have to everyone who's up to $600 more expensive, and say, yes, I think that this guy is a better play than all of those guys, and not just the guys that are below him in price, the way we usually have to do. Another way to put this is, like, I was looking at some like 2v2 comparisons for just a random lineup that I had built. And if I wanted to change a 2v2 when I had no money left on the table, there were like 4 different combos that I could go to for similar price guys and similar projected guys. If I wanted to go to a 3v3, it was like, now instead of 4 options, I had something like 12 options. If you have $600 left on the table, instead of trying to make the right choice out of 4 or 12 options, it's like trying to make the right choice out of 50 and like 600 some options. Like, it's crazy how many different possibilities you can go to and unlock that you now have to beat in order to have the right lineup if you are leaving money on the table. So you're just, again, like, it doesn't feel like a huge thing, but even when you're only leaving $600 on the table, let alone like the 5,000, which obviously was an exaggeration in the chat, you're just making things so much more difficult on yourself. And that's not just like a mathematical answer. It's also borne out in the actual data where leaving money on the table creates losing lineups.
And it's not just, I know this because you research and I follow it, like I said, super excited. The part 1 only of what you put up for the NFL so far had me fired up for like 2 hours reading through it the other night in your Discord. So love that. But I will say, like, a lot of people say, okay, Alex, but you brought up a good point. Anyone who's been with us at least for a long time, we will be back for NFL Leverage Lane this upcoming season, which we're excited about. But I will say, remember the 2 tight end thing. When you're like, yeah, but remember, no one's really playing 2 tight end lineups. So you're not going to get to see how that data plays out as much because, you know, no one's really going there. If only 3% of the field's playing it, of course you didn't see them, even though it felt like it was National Tight End Week during week 3 last year or whatever it was. And we remember this conversation. You'll say, well, not a lot of people are using those lineups. But at the end of the day, the points to me, and you hit it home quite well, is I think, like, when you're trying to do that, it's not that like the it's median projections in golf. Like if you get, 333 as your projection and 357 is the optimal, like, so be it. Like, that might mean nothing because whatever. But the point is like, people say, but here's one I get commonly, the optimal always comes in at 46.5 and 45.6. Like, yeah, that's literally, you don't need the optimal to win. Like, the winning lineup might be 60, 70 points off the optimal in PGA some weeks. Like, it's not very often. And you say, well, I'm going to build all 150 lineups and hope to hit that lottery ticket. There might be a million lineup combinations in there, and you're trying to get 150 of them, and you haven't even touched the top 10% of those lineups that you needed to have that ended up being the actual optimal and whatever. So it's like, you don't need to do it. You probably won't get it right if you do it. even if you do it with all of your lineups, it probably still won't matter because it's still out of such a small portion out of such a big number that it's like really not going to be valuable to you trying to get that right. And again, if you just knew that stuff so well, you could just apply it then. If you were so good at that, just take that lineup and figure out who the exact 1v1 is then. If you're good enough to figure that out, you may as well just figure out the rest of it and just build it accordingly and build it within the $500 plus parameters.
So three things here. Hopefully I can remember all 3 points. The first one is just addressing your point about like the tight end stuff. So when I say that it's a losing strategy, I don't mean that it's not like that we're not seeing those lineups at the top. What I mean is, given how often it's played, it's finishing in the top 10% and the top 1% of lineups less often than we would expect if we just like treated every lineup as random and there was, no skill involved. So when I say it's a losing strategy, I mean like people who are playing those lineups are being disappointed by the lineups far more often than the average person in the contest. So that's part one. Part two is I think another key point to make here is think about all of the people who are actually playing those lineups. They're leaving $600 on the table, $1,000 on the table, $1,500 on the table. I don't think any of those people have the assumption that, you know what, this is a bad week to leave money on the table, but I'm going to do it anyway. Just about everyone who is doing that, everyone who's leaving money on the table, they're saying something in their mind of like, usually this is a bad idea, but maybe this week it's a good idea. Maybe this week it's actually sharp, and it still ends up being a losing strategy. And so I certainly like, is it possible to build a good lineup that leaves money on the table? Yes. Is it possible to have success with it? Yes. But you're just making things harder on yourself than if you just build a normal lineup. And the last point I'll make there, and I think this does a good job of kind of driving the point home, is let's say you nail like the top 4 guys in your lineup are just perfectly chosen. They're all in the top 10. You've got the guy leading and it's coming down the stretch. And so basically like there are other people who have that combination of 4 players and it's coming down to the last 2v2, but in this big giant tournament, it's down to like 4 guys. Right. And so maybe you have, let's say $6,300 left per player in those last 2 spots. So you have combinations like Gary Woodland and Sungjae Im or JT Poston and Alex Noren, things of that nature. And you're competing with other teams who have combinations like that because they're all choosing from the guys down here. If instead you have a combination like Gary Woodland and Sungjae Im, but you left a lot of money on the table, now you're competing with that final 2v2 of like Siwoo Kim and Tom Kim, or Siwoo Kim and Minwoo Lee, or Aaron Rai and Harris English, right? Like you're bringing in higher quality of players that your 2v2 has to now beat than they otherwise would. And that just makes it a lot harder, not just because there are more of them. There are so many more combinations that now you could be up against, but because now you're up against literally better players. And so we get this question a lot. We're going to continue to get it. We're going to get it in week 1 of the NFL season. We're going to get it for Showdown just about like every single slate. And every single time people are making the case, I know that usually it's a bad strategy, but maybe this week it's a good one. And my biggest point is like, number one, none of us are good enough to identify the one slate that it's actually a good strategy. Right. And number two, even if it does work, like there are plenty of other simpler things that you can choose to go on and attack the slate in just a better way.
That's my thing. Like you said, they're trying to like pinpoint and crystal ball the week, the slate, the lineup, and the move. Like what the one, and this is like the prime one. Like JB's point here is correct. Projection wise, and especially in median golf projections, who gives a shit? Like you said, like you'll lose 6 points going from Shane Lowry down to 6,900 this week. That leaves 1,000 on the table. I get it. But then it's okay, we'll do 900 and down. Then is okay, you're not playing Shane Lowry. Are you picking Cantlay, Reed, Matsuyama, Siwoo, Minwoo, Tom Kim, Griffin, Cam Smith, Connors? That's all within $900 to $1,100. Congrats on the move. Not you, JB, just in general, when people do this, and it's most of them are just letting it optimize or doing it, letting it fall into place. I'm just saying there's just those moves. Plus, the answer wasn't that. It was actually shit. You were supposed to play Lowry, but your Goddard pick at 85 was supposed to drop to Alex Fitzpatrick or Neiman or something where that's where you were supposed to leave the 1,000 on the table. It's like, like again, you only get what you get. And I understand that, especially with optimizers, but that's one point. my second one, and then we'll move on after this. Just a good exercise here. But funny, and I know Newlands knows this, and he's just making a point. Last year's perfect lineup left 2,300 on the table. You do not want to try and find a way to make the perfect lineup by leaving money for no reason. Just build accordingly with the data you have. Yeah, the funny part is so many people would see this statement and say, obviously, that's so stupid to try and build the exact lay. If last year's lineup was this amount of salary, I'm just going to build 150 lineups to that exact salary. No one would do that. But funny enough, on just a side note, well, last week, this guy played good at golf. Last year at the Open, or the last two Opens, this golfer has been so good. And they will use that as like their go-to for this week. And it's like kind of the same thing. It's like you wouldn't use it because it's really not valid for this year and this event. But so many people do that in other areas. Well, like last week, so-and-so played good and so-and-so sucked. There's no way that could flip this week. Or it could. Shout out to the big guy. And then the last one, you mentioned Showdown. This is a spot, and I talk about this over at Mastermind all the time, but like the Showdown slates where there's a AM wave advantage on a Saturday, round 3. Well, it's already down to 70-ish golfers, so you do have a smaller field you're working with. Only Xander and Hideki play in the morning. So they're going to be like 50 and 40% owners owned. That's where I do know where I want to go and why I want to do it. It's like I do want some lineups where I use Xander and Decky. I want some lineups where I use just Xander, no Decky. I want some lineups where I use Decky and no Xander. But then I want some lineups where I use none of them because it's just like if those aren't the two, they all get just 18 holes. It's any given round, whatever. Yes, I might be leaving $4,000 or $5,000 on the table depending on how the pricing sets up. But that is a totally different scenario and strategy than what we're talking about here. And it's not over 2 days and it's with a shortened pool and so on and so on and so forth. So it's different is all I'm saying. Go ahead.
Yeah, I really like that point because it ties perfectly into something I wanted to say about like the optimal lineup landing on a bunch of money left on the table quite frequently. The reason for that is purely mathematical. And that is, if you look at like the total number of combinations of lineups that you can make that leave less than $500 on the table, it's like orders and orders and orders of magnitude less than the number of possible lineups that leave a lot of money on the table. So yes, probabilistically speaking, the optimal lineup is more likely than not to leave a bunch of money on the table, but that's simply just a numbers game because there are so many more combinations. And that's also like the exact same argument why it works on those wave advantage showdown slates or, different course showdown slates like you get early in the season for that exact reason you just mentioned. Like if all you need for $2,000 to be left on the table to be like the optimal route is for literally 2 expensive guys to not do super well, okay, that makes it really, really likely that like that's going to be, a much better strategy that day and in that specific instance than on a main slate in an open championship. When, like, again, like even if you think, someone made the point that like price doesn't determine how a guy plays. You're right, it does not. But just because you don't think you can do better than like, let's say your 5,600 guy by moving him up to anyone below 6,200, sure, but that's not the only question. For it to be the viable strategy, it's not just that the 5,600 guy can't get better. It's that all of the other spots in your lineup also can't get better. And that's just really, really, really rare.
Yeah, I love that call. I want to bring up, I mentioned the big guy. Obviously, I've talked a little bit about this on this before, but I do want to point it out. We're just over a month away from the big guy event. It is going to be in Las Vegas at the D Casino and Hotel. We'll be at Circa for some of the weekend as well, but the event is Friday night, August 21st, 7:30 to 10:30. It's at the Detroit Ballroom. We're going to be celebrating James, who passed last year. So we want to make sure as many people as possible can get there. The entire DFS community is welcome to join us. We've put this on. We had a big GoFundMe last year, raised a ton of money. Shout out to everybody that put money in. Anybody that put a significant amount got offered an option to get tickets to this for free. Everybody else, we've used that money. We did donations to 2 different charities of James's choice. But and then also we did a additional amount towards this, and then Ship It Nation put money up outside of pocket as well to make this happen and make it enjoyable for everybody. If you've come to some of the other events, we did one in Arizona, and we also did one a different one in Detroit, but with less people there. But Big Guy was at it. So if you guys want to come out, support, celebrate James, definitely make sure you get in. If you don't know how to get to the website, it's just shipitnation.com/the-big-guy-event. That's a lot though. So honestly, just add me on X at ToeTagginTambo, add me in Discord, ToeTagginTambo. I will send you the details, get you set up, make sure you're good to go. There's a couple of different ways that you can get in. There's a fun burgundy big guy collectible that goes with it where you get a shirt and a hat and all that type of thing. So make sure to check that out if you guys can, and come on down. But Alex, let's get into it. I'm going to use the stone and get into this week. Before we do get this up, do you want to talk a little bit about the course fit and the weather? I think that's going to be the important part to start on. And then of course starting on T1 and golf all day long and the pockets and all this different stuff that everybody wants to hear about. I'll let you go into weather and the course fit first, and then we'll hop into the optimal lineup and what it looks like for the chalk build this week as we try and predict the most duped lineup of the week.
Yeah. So for course fit, the strategy that I took this week was instead of trying to just look at this course specifically, I just kind of looked at all Open Championships, tossed out St. Andrews because St. Andrews plays so different than the other Open Championship roto courses. So at the Open Championship, we get some very clear patterns where, like, no matter the venue, they kind of test players in the same way. Distance matters less than usual outside of St. Andrews. Again, accuracy off the tee matters more than usual. I think it's important to note that, like, that strokes gained driving accuracy metric, it's also capturing decision-making skill off the tee. And so, like, someone who's making the wrong choice and taking on these pot bunkers that they shouldn't, that's going to show up in this stat. So that's, I think, part of why the strokes gained driving accuracy status is so incredibly predictive at Open Championships. And then the rest of it is just kind of like, yeah, everything matters. You have to have good all-around games. You have to be able to scramble, things of that nature. You have to have a good mentality. And to that point, I've also found a lot of predictive value in certain splits. So major championship performance has been really indicative of Open Championship performance in the future. Performance in windy conditions and performance in difficult scoring conditions are both very predictive of success at the Open Championship. So I've been looking at a lot of that stuff. I will say, like, I think one of the most common kind of talking points about this specific Open Championship is that there's going to be a lot of less than driver holes, particularly because of how firm it is. And from a weather standpoint, it looks like, there's going to be breeze, and the breeze is going to pick up throughout the day for Thursday and Friday, but sun is going to be shining. It's not going to be cold for this area of the world at this time of year. So, like, honestly, weather conditions couldn't be better in that regard. I do think, in a weird way, like, we often think of like a lack of wind or just a little bit of wind as difficult, because when you're into the wind, it then makes it long. But this course is going to be so firm that even when you're into the wind, you're going to be able to hit the ball a decent length, especially if it's a hole where you can take a driver on. The downwind holes, I think, are actually going to be the tougher ones, because the course is so firm right now, both greens and fairways, that stopping the ball is going to be like the biggest challenge that these guys face. And when you're downwind, obviously it becomes even that much harder to stop the ball. And so, I think guys who spin the ball a lot coming into greens certainly will have an advantage in that regard. But also, it's just like, who can do the best job of, number one, making sure you're making the right decision off the tee and executing the tee shot. Because no matter who you are, if you are in the rough or off the fairway in any way, you lose control over the golf ball, both spin, trajectory, shape, all of that, compared to the guys in the fairway. So that's going to be priority number one. And then just who's the most accurate and who's the most dialed with their trajectory and carry distance and all that stuff coming into these greens. So I think it's going to be an awesome, awesome challenge. And everyone is going to struggle at times hitting greens and hitting the correct portion of the greens. And so everyone's also going to be tested from an around the green and putting standpoint as well.
You kind of touched on this, but is there anything you want to add to this one from J Fine 131? It says, with the course being baked out and narrow-ish fairways, could this lead to tee shots potentially running through fairways? You talked a little bit about that, and the ball just running out and the downwind holes and everything there, but it says, in the course becoming more of a bomber's track than people are thinking.
Maybe to a degree. I think the number one way where I see distance potentially being an advantage here is because the primary goal off of every tee is avoid the pot bunkers, and also like these mounds on the side of the fairways. Number one, they're really, really cool. And number two, because you can get some like really severe sloped lies, up slopes, down slopes, left to right, right to left slopes, that really adds to the difficulty coming out of the rough and the fescue compared to when you get flat lies, and where, you know, a lot of the time, like in open championships, sometimes big misses are better than small misses because the big misses go to where everyone's been walking and everything's trampled down. You don't really get that effect here because you're going to be on like a severe slope where all you can do is advance the ball, you know, 100 yards or something like that. So there's that aspect. But I think the primary way the distance can be predictive is there are going to be holes where the number one thing you have to do is avoid pot bunkers. Pot bunkers are kind of all over the place, right? And so if your distance allows you to eliminate a specific pot bunker because you can carry it over that pot bunker, okay, that's an advantage. There are also going to be times where, like, let's say to clear one pot bunker, you have to carry it 280, but there's also another pot bunker at 340. So a lot of the guys who are able to clear 280, driver's going to land 290, 300, and run out to that 340 pot bunker. So you can't just, you know, eliminate either one by carrying that first one. But a longer guy might be able to hit 3-wood over that. 3-wood will carry 290, but the 3-wood won't run out to 340. So you get an advantage that way. So there are potential aspects and certainly certain holes that distance is going to be predictive. But all in all, I don't think it's going to be anywhere near as important as accuracy and just kind of like overall precision and control of your ball flights.
Yeah, that answers it well. I think, again, people are going to be asking a bunch of different stuff like this to try and dial it in. And we'll talk about, you know, this one where, you know, Matty Fitz definitely could be pushing 30 and like single entry, higher dollar stuff. But like in the other stuff, I think we are going to be closer to that 20-25 range. We'll see what it actually shakes out like. Garrett had asked about Fitz, Henley, and Kims. The Kims we're talking about. I mean, I got the Fitz, both Kims and Henley, and it lands on Fleetwood and Bobby Mack. So Fleetwood Mac is going to be a thing for sure this week too. And I don't know if that's the best with it, like the main one. We'll talk about that in a second. Did you want to touch, I guess we'll save a couple of these actually. I'll save a couple for when we get to ways to leverage it and going through that type of thing. But let's talk about this chalk build. It can be different for sure. Like I can go Bobby Mack and Henley into something like JT and Hovland. I can get Fleetwood out of there and just, you know, build more balance. What sort of setup are you seeing? These, by the way, are coming in around 355 on the, this is just a rough draft, right? We'll have two different versions up, one right after we get off the show and then one before tonight with the final ownership and everything over at Chip It Nation. But just noting it, what are you seeing right now and what would you set it up like? Let's try and get the most duped lineup.
I think this one has a chance to be the most duped. I think there will also be like iterations where, let's say, instead of Tommy, you go to one of the upper 9K guys. So let's say Rahm, and that lets you move Henley to Goddard up, I believe. And so, you know, that kind of iteration will also be super, super popular. I think it's actually predicting the most duped lineup is tough because most of the field is trying to avoid dupes and trying to like do something in the lineup that they think makes them different. And the mistake that they make is not considering conditional ownership, which we talk about all the time. So like you're funneled into the same range as everybody else. There's a 15% guy as your last option or an 8% guy as your last option. You choose the 8% guy thinking, oh, that'll be the thing that makes me different and not duped, except everyone else had the exact same choice and thought that that was also the decision that would make them less duped. So it doesn't mean that you can like avoid the dupe by going with the more popular guy. It just means that you have to recognize that with the rest of your build, that player, even though he's 8% overall, is not going to be 8% in lineups that are like yours. He's going to be 25% in lineups like yours. So, conditional ownership is such an important thing to think about. And obviously we'll talk even more about it for NFL season, I think. But so like the thing that you have to look for when trying to predict the most duped lineup is who's somebody who fits that mold of like, most people are going to think that this is a decision that makes them a little bit contrarian, but it's actually not. And that's a little bit tougher. I think it would be something like moving off of Tom Kim or Siwoo Kim to like a Minwoo Lee, who's just a little bit less chalky than those guys, but it's going to feel like a pivot, or, moving to Cantlay instead, or getting up to like a Joaquin Neiman, but he's still popular and just not as popular as Siwoo, Tom Kim, that kind of pocket of guys. So that's the kind of thing I would look for if we're literally trying to predict the most duped lineup.
What about Oh man, it's gonna get flamed, but like I don't care. I'm saying it. The most disrespectful price in the history of any major championship is Hideki Matsuyama at 6,900. I don't care that Tom Kim won last week and is right there or anything. Like it just doesn't make it doesn't like that does not sit right. And again, the fact that he's going to be a pivot to those guys and it won't project it. It could be 10. I mean, so we got it almost 10 points less. So I get it, but man, that is just a crazy price. I know like Cantlay's right there and Reed and it's already soft pricing and Spieth and all that. It doesn't feel right. For some reason, it just hits different when it's Hideki. Do you have any thoughts on that one? Because I can't see a world like I think people will play Reed more. I think they'll play Aaron Rye more. I think Spieth will get a little bit of steam. I know that Siwoo, Tom Kim, Minwoo will all get more love. And then you go down below to like the Spawns and the England. Like how does Hideki eventually get played?
I mean, within $1,000 of Hideki, I think it's basically a guarantee that all of Burns, Henley, JT, Alex Fitz, Neiman, Rye, Cantlay, Reed, Siwoo, Minwoo, Tom Kim, JJ Spawn, Harris English, Kurt Kitayama, maybe even Rayton. All of these guys are going to be higher owned than Hideki. And so, yeah, I wouldn't say that I'm on Hideki this week, but I do think at $6,900, he's a very strong play once again.
Yeah, and that's the other thing too. Like again, all these versions, this is where it does get a little bit interesting to me because you talk about like the ownership and how it sets up and people like looking to leave all this money and stuff. It's if you have these three golfers, right? I'm using Tom Kim, Siwoo Kim, and Minwoo for those who are listening on podcast. And yes, I will end up in the same zone if I just slightly change this. But to me, it is quite different if you go Hideki, Reed, and Cantlay. It's like those guys all have much lower ownership across the board. But again, it's not even just about the ownership savings because it's potentially only slight as more things get kept in check. Now, in the higher stakes, smaller field stuff, Siwoo Kim is probably the most disrespected on like the page of projection versus, stats versus the year versus, I get that. I'm more talking from a personal standpoint. And me and Alex have talked about Hideki a bunch of times this season, so I wanted to bring that up. But just noting it, this to me is already a way where like I'm not leaving any money. I'm actually spending slightly more. I'm spending a couple, $200-$300 more. But the point being, you can do whatever you want after this and be much different, even though you almost do have guys in the exact same range. So you could get a similar build. It's not the same, but I talked about this a couple weeks ago. It was like Minwoo and Ryan Gerard for the same price as surprise, Hideki's here again, but it was Lowry and Hideki, and Lowry and Hideki beat them on the week. And it was like, you could just play the name golfers with the long-term status and that, or you could play the projection darlings in Ryan Gerard and Minwoo Lee for the same money and more ownership. That's the type of thing that I think comes through more and more at major championships. You think back to the Masters, smaller field, different setup. But remember, you and I were talking about Spieth and Koepka and Max Homa and whoever else. And it was like, yeah, those guys could just show up here though. And the experience matters and all that type of thing. So I just think it's more interesting to think about it from that perspective. If somebody's sitting there on a Saturday morning and let's say Tom Kim misses the cut and they're like, man, the guy that just won last week, like that just tanked me. And I could have played Hideki, who's sitting top 10 right now in all those lineups, basically for the exact same setup. It's $100 more. So I think it's just interesting to think about it from that perspective where that goes back to like, you don't need to leave the money. You could just build differently. But what else with the chalk builds? Like, I mean, the most common thing is I think you are going to see at least one, if not two 6K guys. You are going to see someone in the 10K and above range. So we can talk about that, or you can answer this question from Born Hunter Outdoors, who says for single entries, does skipping over all the 10K guys feel like a total bad idea this week? You usually endorse a little bit of the balanced build. I'm seeing, again, everybody has different numbers for this, but we're seeing, close to, 25-ish% win equity up above 10K. So with Scottie, Rory, Fleetwood, and Fitzpatrick, some would argue there's no win equity with a guy like Tommy Fleetwood, but just noting it. And now Scottie missed a cut. He sucks now, right? So what's your thoughts on this question? Anything else you want to tie in just to the chalk build there?
I definitely don't think it's a bad idea. And so one of the things like we talked about earlier about like ownership concentrating or not concentrating these softer with the soft pricing, it definitely concentrates up top because it's so much easier to not just fit any of the expensive guys into your lineup, but it's also easier to fit multiple expensive guys in any lineup because you then can go, bargain bin hunting in the 6K range and like literally find good players. So basically like everyone 97 and up, I have over 18% ownership in single entries, All but Xander from Ramen up are over 23% in projected ownership for single entries. So yes, I do think there's merit in just skipping that range, hoping that, a winner comes from the 7K range or the 8K range or the 9K range. And a lot of guys in that range also happen to contend. And maybe none of the, top 6 guys finish top 5 or something like that. And so it's definitely viable. I would say not only is it not a dumb decision, but it's also, I think, a pretty smart way to build. The one thing you have to look out for if you're doing that, though, is the 8K range is tiny, right? Like you have literally McIntyre, Clark, Hovland, Bryson, Goddard, Morikawa, Hatton. That's the entire 8K range. And so you're also going to see a concentration of ownership around those guys. Like I think McIntyre, Clark, Hovland, Goddard, Morikawa will all carry a decent amount of ownership, especially Hovland and McIntyre, I think, are going to be the 2 most popular in that range. And so just because you avoid like the concentration of ownership up top doesn't mean that you're automatically very different from everybody else and you don't need to find a separator within the lineup. You still have to treat the rest of the guys like with the same kind of ownership awareness as any other lineup.
Yeah, great point. I'm going to tie it into a couple others because it got mentioned here, like how many separators go into a lineup? Nobody knows. Nobody knows the answer. It might be 0 of like an actual separator because like what if you just play here's an example. So many people said this week, I saw it across different sites and X and I'm going to cap my ownership at 80% and I'll be way ahead of the field just because of that. Okay. You could have all guys at 10% or 12% in your lineup, and none of them are really separators. They're just all that secondary version or tertiary ownership of like, okay, they didn't make the top 10, but it's because it's like you always say, it's not just who you're playing, it's who you're not playing. To someone's point earlier, if I just fade Henley, Fitz, and the Kims, am I different enough? Yeah, you're way different. Most people have at least one of those, and we saw where a lot, especially in smaller field, will have multiple. If you start your lineup with Xander, Cam Young, and Clark, again, we're going into like semantics here because well, then Xander's my separator. Kind of, yeah, because he's probably the lowest owned. I'm just saying you could have a Xander at 13 or 14%, and it's not really that much of a separator. And you might be able to play imagine Xander, Cam Young, and Wyndham Clark. The 10 to 12% guy is going to get called a separator, but you could have all the chalk in with this, and that's just a totally different type of build than anybody else has. If anybody knew the clear number. So when you're putting that in as a thing or trying to make it a thing, you're potentially just ruling yourself out to things, right? It's like when someone says like, I'm only going to do this move in football. Like I'm only going to put 2 wide receivers with every, I want 2 wide receivers with every quarterback. And we've got some research now that maybe will tell you might want to do a little bit different than just that. But the point being, it's like, if you do that, that is a great correlation strategy. But if it's a quarterback, a running back, and a wide receiver that's needed, you have none of those lineups. You've ruled yourself out of the chance to win that week based on whatever your number of lineups is, and you've went with that strategy. So I would keep that in mind as well. The same thing that goes there. And then I will say to this one too, just quickly, not going to comment on the comment because I don't care that much, but Rory mentioned in his presser that the rough was worse a couple weeks ago because the heat has baked some of it out and it won't be as penal. Thoughts on that statement? My thoughts are, if you have a portfolio, and maybe you do, if you really think that's the thing, and it's enough to ask the question, I love my guy Timmy Dubs, but just noting, if that's a thing to you, then you better be building lineups with it and against it. If it's truly enough and worth it and validated to ask the question, and I know you'll say, well, it kind of matters because how guys are going to play is going to matter. Right. But if that's how you think it's going to play, or you think it could be a factor in how people play, then you should have all in lineups on that strategy and all against, because you're saying that's going to be what wavers your thoughts, at least some. So to me, it's like, that's the type of stuff where I look at it and think, okay, maybe you should really build some lineups around that then. Anything you want to add on anything there? If not, we can keep moving.
Yeah, I will. Just a word of caution on that one. Less penal can mean different things. In this case, like the one area where it's probably going to be less penal is like, let's say you just roll through the fairway and you're still in a flat area of the rough. Sure. That'll be less penal. And there are going to be times where, you can land the ball short and bounce it up and you're fine. But let's also remember the big challenge this week is going to be stopping the ball, not getting to the green. So when you're in the rough, like that baked out long rough type stuff that they're describing, that's flyer central. That's when you get the ball that just jumps like crazy, goes way over the green. It doesn't stop. It's going to take a first bounce and then land another 50 or roll another 50 yards, whatever. So yeah, that can still mean trouble, even though it's easier to advance the ball than it may have been a couple weeks ago.
Yeah. All right, let's talk a little bit more about being able to sort of leverage this stuff up this week. I think you talked a little bit. One thing you mentioned that was key that I made a slip up on the mastermind call on Monday night, and I was right as soon as I saw it, I was like, well, wait a second, I don't want to use that example. It's a bad one because the 8K range is so small. Like if you make Bobby Mack your last guy in, you're duped before you haven't even started. Like it's over because it's like it's automatic. There's only so many guys that could fit in that type of build, so you will have to be very careful with these ranges. Even the 7K, by the way. And it might be the smallest 7K I've ever seen.
I'm pretty sure it is.
Ever, maybe. And I've I don't fully track it, but I'm looking at this and tracking it mentally every week, and it's like the same or less, or more. I've never really seen it be this small. So you just have to be very careful with the extremely balanced builds unless you have other stuff going for you, or be cognizant of the field size that you're playing in. In the in the $25 Millie Maker, it's a little bit different than the $200 single entry with 230 people or whatever it is with 10K up top, because really nice structure, really good tournament. If most people are going to be using a 10K and up guy in that, let's say 60% of the field does that, you already put yourself into the 40%, and then you can get a little bit different with roster construction. If you're going with a pocket stack, or if you're going with something, a skill stack that not as many others are on or something like that, you can probably get away with it. But I do think that's important to think about as well. So lastly, I only saw one more question that I thought was good that I wanted to answer quickly was this. The answer is I don't know, because I don't build lineups till Wednesday night. So I actually don't have any clue who's going to be the lowest in yet, but I will get your opinion on this, Alex. Doesn't have to be a player to answer the question directly, because I mean, obviously I'm going to build tonight, but do you see yourself needing the 5K range much, as opposed to like 6K? Like you said, it's hard to avoid. It's not just Nikolai Hogard at the PGA Championship. It's 10 to 12 guys we could talk about right out of the gate. And then in the 5K, sure, gets a little trickier, but do you see yourself going there or needing it for anything that you're doing?
That's exactly how I was going to answer it. It was basically like there's a huge teardrop, I think, below Smalley at $6,000. So like Smalley, Thor Bjornsson, Keith Mitchell, Matt Wallace, Gary Woodland, Ryan Gerard, Alex Noren, Bridgman, Keegan, like all those guys in the 6K range are legitimate players. We have seen them either recently or sometime in the past perform well in a major championship. Once you go below that, it gets pretty thin. And so I would say low 6Ks, and I would probably only have one low 6K guy as the lowest guy in there.
Okay. Yeah, no, it's good. I thought it was just worth chatting about. I'm thinking too, like our man Stump, shout out to Stump, said some interesting course fit guys from DP World Tour. He's saying in the 5K range. I agree, but I think if you're doing it, it's good to like pick your poison. I think I saw something Byron posted out, Model Maniac, last night about like Sam Stevens not missing any cuts. He's not DP World Tour, obviously, but at 5,700, he's a projection darling that sometimes will show up. So if like somebody landed there and he started doing well, I get it. I'm not going to pick that out specifically. John Perry is a guy down there that I sometimes play, but there's a few guys down there, but it's like, same thing as we talked about earlier, like being the expert at getting that right versus just sort of letting them fall into your pool based on the ones you select. I would grab a handful if you're going to do it for your 150 and make your stand so that you get the ones you want, as opposed to what it just gives you. Because if you truly do, like, let's say Stump says, I like Scott Vincent, I like Sam Stevens, and I like Daniel Brown. Okay. Then that 3 should get put into your player pool. You can put a min-max on them if you want it, or something that's going to make sure bump their projection enough that they start getting into some builds if you're using contest sims or something like that, so you can get proper ROIs and stuff related to it. But I would say once you put that in, you could look at it as, look, at least I got some of my guys, quote unquote, my guys in the 5K range. And if I'm right, hopefully I'm all the way right. If I'm wrong, at least I played the guys that I wanted down there. So if you're doing it, I think that's how I would do it, especially for, as Stump followed up with here, definitely more of the MME approach to grab some 5K guys. I agree. Like that could be the way to do it there. Other ways to leverage this week, Alex, we're going to get to our leverage lane later. We'll have the one and done segment, the betting breakdown. I know you got a few more bets this week, so it might be selective of what you toss out there. But from the other ways to leverage this, like we didn't have a big Scottie conversation, but Scottie missed the cut last week. Again, nobody cares. But first of all, we were right on that. Like nobody was playing Scottie last week when he did miss the cut. It's funny how that works. The guy that's super chalk always has his best week when he's super chalk. The guy's like, oh, nobody played Scottie the week he finally misses the cut. And I don't mean nobody specific, like exactly, but you know what I mean? It was a much lower than anybody expected. He actually shook up ownership projections a little bit last week because nobody really suspected him that low, but people were done with him. It just in the sense of done building lineups with him because you have to consider everything with it. And it just wasn't ideal last week. This week, totally different. I loved your call out earlier. I think it's so true. And it doesn't even involve the 5K range, but it's people, even when they make the decision like I said, they'll say, you know what, I'm going to go with what Tambo said. I like Hideki here. I'm a little bit different than these guys. Everybody wanted Chikara last week. I'm saying what they might say. I'm just throwing something. I'm going to go Chikara. And another guy I really like, it feels like nobody's talking about him, but Adam Scott, he can play good over here. All right, I've got 10 grand left almost. Let me go plug Scottie in. So that becomes a thing. I'm just giving you the example of how it happens, not about who you'd put in or the build. But that's to your point earlier. When people are just thinking about it, they're not just always going to go to automatic of Fleetwood, Fitz, and wherever they land. They're going to look at it and say, well, what does Scottie do here? Oh, man, I could still get to somebody in this range and go from there. But any other thoughts on the Scottie topic?
Yeah, I think it's worth kind of like building out what the Chuck Scottie lineup looks like. So here's another way to think of it. If you put Scottie in the lineup, you're left with $7,340 per player remaining. There are 22 players in the entire field over that price. There are 21 non-Scottie guys over that price. So it's just so easy to do. Like there are so many different combinations that you can play. But obviously, once you pick Scottie, Siwoo, Tom Kim, Minwoo. Yeah, I think this is
it. I mean, that's what I said when I said earlier when you asked me the question. It wasn't about congested. It's like it's almost like I was trying to say congested builds. Like to your point, I mean, I love your point. There was like one thing that you said this whole season that it sticks with me every week that I want to talk about it for anybody who hasn't heard it is when people try and be like, yeah, but I got a 2v2 off of that. And I'm different. And it's like, no, you're not. You have a 4v4 that's the same. That's your problem. You're not in a good spot because you're 2v2 different. You're in a bad spot because you're 4v4 the same. There is a bunch of renditions we could work through off of this to say like, oh, that's not technically it, or I think someone will do this instead. Sure. But when I see, it's almost like Alex, back to NFL again and Showdown for that matter. But when we know Sunday Night Football was a 5-1 smash, and it's like, okay, Sunday night, no one was on 5-1, no one in the sense of like very little of the field. Let's say it was 8% owned, 5-1s, and we had an overweight stance, but it still didn't work out. But then 5-1 hammers it. What happens on Monday night? It's like the Eagles, I'll use your team, at home. They're 7.5-point favorites against the team. It's like, oh, okay, could be this, could be that, but it's just a thing. But all of a sudden, 5-1s are super owned compared to the night before. It's like they're up to 21% of the field is now on 5-1s because there's all the residue from the night before and then trickling over. And then also the stuff people saying, well, plus they're at home, plus they're almost 8-point favorites, like plus Barkley and Hurts. And I get all that. That's what I mean by congested. You said build the Scottie build. It was like 2 seconds. I don't know if it's exact, but it's got to be close, very close.
Yeah, I would almost say that I think this is where the most duped lineup is going to come in because so like we have this exact lineup. So let's go Tom Kim. I'm just putting it in myself so I can see this exact thing. So I'm going to put McIntyre instead of Henley. Everything else will be the same, except then Minwoo becomes 67 as the last guy in. And so now like someone's going to look at this and say, oh, I can go JJ Spawn or Harris English and he's less than 10%. And that makes me different, except everyone else who had this like very straightforward first 5 in, Scottie, Tom Kim, McIntyre, Hovland, Siwoo Kim. That's a super, super straightforward start. Lands on that exact number, 6,700. So whether you're choosing Spawn or Harris English, that conditional ownership is going to be massive for this kind of a start. So I think this will be the most duped lineup. And it's got like all the ingredients of the most duped lineup. And the last thing I want to say is I'm seeing birthday narrative discussion in the chat. I hate it. I hate it so much. So Stump knows that he's doing it on purpose to annoy me, but there are some others in there who I think are really on the birthday narrative. It has nothing to do with success. If playing good golf was as easy as wanting to play good golf, then everyone would play good golf all the time.
That's what I just, if we could pinpoint it'd be so, like I said, I mean, there's people that are doing golf betting and I get it, betting outrights, and they're doing it accordingly. They're being very responsible. They have bankroll management. They're saying, I'm betting 6-7 guys this week and I'm going to win 7-1 when I win. And that's great, but you need to hit 7 of those. So it's like that. Why are they not hitting 7 winners on the season, or you don't even see 3 or 4? It's like, it's because it's hard. golf betting is hard. They get to pick 7 within a skill set, within a course, within a price package. Like, it's all legit. But I'm saying it's very hard to get it correct. If we knew how to do that, that would be a lot easier to win a lot more money. It's like, at the end of the day, we're playing a game here, and I like Go Collects that this is leverage lane, not narrative street. Yeah, that's for sure. And nothing gets the chat fired up more than if you say Eagles, Cowboys, or Giants. Like, any of those 3 teams, man, and it's crazy. It's you can't say a bad word about them because it's like, that's how it goes. But
by the way,
yeah,
fun fact, I share a birthday with Adam Scott. So
okay, your birthday's tomorrow.
Yes, it is.
Wow. Happy early birthday. Everybody in the chat, give Alex a happy birthday and leave a comment for him. But that's amazing, man. So how old are you turning now?
34.
Young.
If there's a birthday narrative that I want to be true, it's that you win on your birthday in DFS. I don't think it's a real thing, but if there is one, I hope it's that one.
Well, that's the problem then, though, because you can't win it on Thursday besides your showdown slates. But what are you going to win tomorrow in DFS?
Yeah. And not only that, but like there's not even MLB to play. So
yeah, you're in big trouble. So let's go. I'll give you one. My anniversary is on Sunday, and I want the anniversary. You win on your anniversary to be true for $1 million. You win $1 million on your anniversary to be true, and then you take that $1 million to the Fantasy Golf World Championship with you next week and win another $1 million. That's the narrative that I'm wishing for, and I want to be true. We all have these crystal balls out there, like we said. So if we can just make it happen, let's make it happen. That'd be great.
Yeah, I do think that one of the like potentially coolest sports stories of all time is if England were to win the World Cup on the same day that an Englishman wins the Open Championship for the first time in that many years. Like, that would be truly one of the best sports days in the history of the world. So that would be very cool. It doesn't mean that I'm going to go play English guys because that has no effect on it. It would just be a cool outcome, and that's okay.
What about, what's the other one this week? Corrales?
Something like that. Yeah.
What about Messi wins another one on the way out and Toasty wins the Corrales?
There you go.
Which do you think pays more? I mean, there's no baseball today, right? We got at least a minute to burn. I know you got to go, but
Toasty has to play more.
Okay. Oh man, I wish I could pull this up quickly. Can somebody do this for us just so we can keep on with the show? I want to see England to win the World Cup parlayed and do it with Fleetwood. I know Rose fits it, but let's do Fleetwood because it's his hometown. Like, that would be the crazier of the thing.
I don't know, man. I mean, Rose has been hunting this for a while, and if you parlay with Rose, then you at least have the chance to win.
But what about people are gonna say Fitz too? Obviously, what about imagine not playing Harris English, but he's not European, he's American. But just saying, like, you could get that angle too. But just going from this, I want to know what England with Aaron. You hook us up, man. What is England to win the World Cup with these 3 each pay? And then somebody get me Argentina to win the World Cup with Toasty at the Corrales. That's what I want to see.
I want to know England with Matt Wallace.
Oh, that's a good one. What about Spain with Rom?
Yeah, that's a good one too.
That could be it. All right. One other thing. Okay, so I'll go back here too. Is there any chance? I just want to ask you this. I don't think there is. We talk about this all the time of, like, how everyone gets ownership and what that means, but then some get more than others. It is 13-3 Scottie with a 5K range. So it is like last year. That's why I do think, and we talked about the hand builds, and we already agree that kind of like these numbers might be something. We talked about Fitz, and especially in higher stakes, smaller field stuff. We talked a little bit about Fleetwood and the hometown narrative and all that. I know Rory's still going to get ownership, but is there just any chance at all at 11-9 that now he's kind of the guy that's just squeezed in the middle of those, and it ends up being that he's more like 14-15 or something? Is that possible here?
Yeah, it's definitely possible. If it happens, I think what we would see is like Scottie got to 35 or 40, Tommy, Fitzpatrick, Rom, that group like all got to 30 or just averaged 30 or something like that. And yeah, that would make Rory down at like 13, 14%, something like that is probably his lower bound for ownership. But yeah, I think that's really, really in play. And I would say it's more likely that Rory falls that far than he's the one who steams up to like 35%.
Agreed. Definitely think that is a good call. Our man Scooter got the Rose one out early, said 167. Oh man, toasty Argentina. Pop that sucker in, baby. That thing's going to the moon. That could actually hit. I mean, that's very possible. So could the England ones. Obviously, England, this one's nice too. I do like that Wallace call, by the way. And it's not even like a picks thing. I just think he's a guy I like. He actually cost me big last week. I had a really nice 5 of 6 with Matt Wallace, and he was 7,300, I think, last week. Now he's plus 70,300 to go with England to win. And I don't know, everyone thought France was going to win yesterday and got crushed by Spain. So I think a lot of people are in on Messi today, but they're I think they're still the underdog. So it's not like the public is, but just to note it, defending champions from last year, I think is interesting as well. But why people are thinking that. There was something else. This is Wes. We did talk about this, Wes. The logic is that even if you built your whole 150 pool, you're going against millions of lineups of what the optimal might actually be. And like your 150, just because you built in that price range, you could be in the 95th to 100 to 99 percentile. Your lineups are shitty at the end of the week. Obviously, it could be the other way. I'm just saying you're going up against such a large situation. You won't need the optimal to win. It could be like, a 50 to 100 point gap on what the actual winning lineup is versus the optimal.
Yeah, I mean, we already answered this, but I'll reiterate the point because I think it's an important one. The reason why you see optimal builds sub 49K as often as you do is not because they're likely to happen or that you're likely to be able to find the right one. It's because if you look at all possible combinations of lineups, any combination of 6 players that works, you're going to see like orders and orders of magnitude. So like I'm not talking hundreds more, like tens, hundreds of thousands more combinations of lineups that leave that much on the table than lineups that don't. That's the only reason why you see that many optimals come with $1,000 or more left on the table. It's just math, but it doesn't affect what is right for us in any way, shape, or form. What the data that we have, like that actually shows what lineups are good strategies, what lineups are bad strategies, show very, very clearly that leaving $500 or more on the table is a losing strategy. By doing it, you are less likely to get into the top 1% or the top 10% of lineups than if you just randomized a lineup that left less than 500 on the table. It's just a losing strategy, like through and through.
Yeah. Good summary again. I brought that one up. Another one. I'm going to save another one for my leverage lane, but do you have anything else that you want to touch? I think we kind of inverse handled it this week of things like the overbalanced lineup can't work like it can versus the other stuff. It obviously could happen. Anything is possible. Kevin Garnett.gif. I talk about that all the time, but it's not what I'd be wanting to play in these tournaments. So I think it's like, the other thought process is somebody brought it up earlier is like, if you go to a lineup of like, let's say you talked about, where is he here now? What's his price this week? Keith Mitchell.
One interesting note I'll make, like on the overbalanced lineup, is like if you remember, my Masters leverage lane was doing exactly that. It was making Siwoo Kim, who I think was $7,700, my cheapest guy. I plugged in my Masters lineup. It leaves like $3,500 on the table. So we really do have significantly softer pricing than what we had for the Masters, even though the Masters was already really soft pricing.
Yeah. I think one thing I wanted to point out was just like, if you had 2 guys in the lower 6s, you can almost do anything now, because this is where, like, again, how many people will have Siwoo as their 4th guy in, right? For an example, and you still have over 10,000 as a play. And you have to pick your own poison. I know, the boys are messing with you about like Keith Mitchell and, whatever, even if you actually do like. My point being, it's like think about these types of setups where it's like, okay, people are playing Siwoo, but mostly as a 5th or a 6th golfer. I'm going to play him as my 4th, or I'll actually play him as my, chalk version for sure. And then it goes Scottie in there. But again, how many people are going to have these 2%ers at the bottom, play both those and something else? And it could be Rory and whatever. And I'm just using Siwoo and Tom Kim as examples. But my point would be, there's also taking those 2 out of it, playing down this way, and then doing something else. Now, this is where like I'm going to eat the chalk on Matty Fitz, but I'm not going to play Henley, Tom Kim, Minwoo, or Siwoo, or Hovland, to be honest. And I've got 3 spots left, and I'm going to pepper the upper 8Ks and the lower 9s, or just the lower 9s, and land on that. It's like, yes, there's only so many versions of that, but also not really, because you could have a different opinion than Mitchell and Wallace at the bottom. They're 2% owned guys. There's so many 2% owned guys down there. So it's like just another example. And then obviously, if you wanted to put a Rory into this, it would leave you in the mid 8s, and you could still go 9s and 7s or something and do it that way. If you wanted to go Rahm, right? And you had a couple of these guys, Rahm, Ludwig, you still have 9,300. Now you could start making some decisions that way. So these are part of the quote unquote all-star builds that if you do just get your stuff down low, right? And I picked Mitchell and Wallace. For you, it could be someone totally different, but I'm just going to use like projections for the basis of it.
Yeah.
Kitayama and Keegan, they're still projected decent, and they're still super low owned. They just can't get enough ownership, and they still fit the unique style of build. So it's just an example to show again of like just making some of those slight moves. Don't just move you off the chalk and leverage that upper 6K range, but it also could leverage the type of build that you're on, and that your overall construction is different because of that.
Yeah, and to the earlier conversation, like when you do that sort of thing, make sure you're using most of the salary so that your combination of Wallace and Mitchell doesn't have to go beat combinations that include Siwoo Kim and Minwoo Lee or Tom Kim and that group. So yeah, just kind of tying all those conversations together. Tambo, can you highlight the comment below the one that's currently highlighted?
Yeah, but I would say happy birthday to you, happy birthday to Scott, and happy birthday to Adam Scott, and happy birthday to Will Ferrell. Man, what a birthday crew. That'd be a golf foursome right there. You, Scott Traz, Adam Scott, and Will Ferrell out on the course.
I love it.
All right, you want this one?
Yes. So there are a couple of things here. First of all, like I don't expect this to be, this is like one of the harder concepts to really explain well just here live. So, this is the kind of thing that if you're really interested in learning more about, it's a great kind of thing to join Mastermind for, to join my Discord for. But the first thing is, if you're in an MME contest, yes, everyone is trying to be different, but there are also going to be people who don't know how to set, player groups correctly, or have that sort of filter where they're going to get some just pure chalk lineups, and that's going to be duped. If you're in a single entry kind of contest where everyone is hand building instead of using an optimizer, you might be able to use this kind of this kind of logic where you're saying, well, everyone's trying to be different. So if I just play all of the chalk in the most obvious lineup, no one else is going to have that because everyone else is going to try to pivot at least one player. You might be able to avoid a dupe this way. But even if you do, all of your conditional ownerships are through the roof. You have no unique combinations of players. You have no way to separate outside of the one route where literally all 6 of your guys do really, really well. So even though you might not be duped, you don't have any potential separation. And so that would still be a really, really like losing strategy.
Yeah, if you guys do want to check out Mastermind, to Alex's point there, you can go to dfsmastermind.com. It talks a ton about what we've talked about here on this show today and just finding your actual process. But the main thing is you could start for as little as $47, right? You get the 7 hours of the My Map modules. And really the way I frame that up, Alex, for people is just like, if you think about it, we've spent thousands of hours working on these things so that somebody else can go in and take, 7 hours of their life. It's a less than a 9-to-5 shift to go get 7 hours of the combination. So go to dfsmastermind.com. You can start with that. It counts towards your upgrade if you want full community access. So check that out. If you want to go to Ship It Nation, the all access special is $49. And before we get to one and done and all that, now let the people know just a little while we're doing the marketing, what you've got going on this week for your Discord, FTN, anything else you got going on that you want to talk about. And then we'll get to the one and done segment.
Yeah. Biggest thing is what I announced last week. Just kind of going to hit this every single week until NFL season. Ownership projections, my projections, GPP scores are all going to be available in my Discord for the NFL season. Prices are going to go up, but if you get locked in, if you become a subscriber before September, you are locked in forever to the price that it is currently at. So make sure you take advantage of that and use promo code leverage because you get 10% off forever on top of that. So lots and lots of future savings available if you get in now. And obviously, like, what better time to do that than Open Championship Week?
For sure. Yeah, I can't say enough good things about it. So if you guys aren't in there, go check that out. If you have any questions on any of this stuff, the Big Guy event, Mastermind, Alex's Discord, you want to reach out to either of us, myself at ToeTagginTambo. Follow Alex, like he mentioned, over on X. But let's talk about the one and done. We're wrapping up the season, right? We're getting close to the end here now. So it is tricky when it comes to, everybody's different. So let's just talk about ours because it's whatever people can take away from the conversation, I think is important more than like they're all in different places. If you guys have questions, you could throw them in and maybe it's a good talking point. But we're way behind. What would you say to somebody, and what are we saying to ourselves when you're that far behind? You got to go off the board now. Like, there's just no benefit to getting the $4 million win from Hatton this week if he wins, because it's like, it doesn't even do it. That's going to be the most owned he's been all season. This is the place people are wanting to use him or saved him for.
Yeah, I mean, so a couple of things. Like, number one, at the top, most of these guys are going to be pretty low owned at this point, because like Scottie's only available in 5% of teams. Rory 24%, Fitz 19%, Cam Young 24%. So no one can be super popular up here. So you have that to your advantage. I think the most important thing I would say is, if you're not trying to get off the board and be really contrarian, the other way to do it is to pick players who have already won this year, particularly in big events. So like Rory won the Masters, right? Goddard has multiple wins. Cam Young has multiple wins. If you take these guys and they win, the people who have them alongside of you are other people who didn't have them earlier in the season. So those who had them earlier in the season can't possibly be on those guys. You can make up ground that way as well. And so from that perspective, Tambo, we have Rory remaining. I think he's where I would go. Our next best player, we could go Wyndham.
What's Rory's percentage? Option? I missed Rory's percentage.
He's available in 24% of teams.
Yeah, which I think is fine. And also I think interesting because, like, again, like when you said like Fitz is available in 19%, like that kind of just get jammed this week. Like he might not be 19%, but I'm saying he's going to be up there. What's Hatton's availability? High.
Yeah, it's going to be very high, since obviously you can't use him very often. 68%.
Yeah. So I mean, he's getting used about. So that's why, like, it's funny because people are, well, I still feel like too many people will have Rory. It's like, probably not. Like it's like, it's a fair number, sure, but it's like, we still want a guy that can win and we want the money. So it's like, I'd be fine with Rory. What's Wyndham's percentage?
Wyndham's is 63%.
Okay, so that's interesting. And then what is Rahm? Somebody else made that. I think, again, we probably pegged it right. If Rahm had done good last week, it would have carried over. But what is he?
Oh, actually 39%.
Yeah, so Rahm, Hatton, and Fitz alone, and then whatever people have left on Fleetwood and so on and so forth. So I actually don't mind Rory at all. I think that's fine.
Yeah, I think he'll be pretty contrarian. I think that's the way to kind of think through this, regardless of how you've done this season, is just who can you go to that actually gives you like a chance to really go up the board? Because the other thing is, we're way behind. It doesn't help to just be different. We have to be different and right. Rory at least gives us a pretty good chance of getting that win, and I don't think he can be more than like 7-8%, given how many people still have him. And the prevailing narrative this week is that it's not a bomber's course. It's a less than driver course that, in theory, hurts Rory. So again, I think he's a pretty solid choice for sure. Yeah,
that call out was super sharp this season too from you about, again, we still had a lot of season left for us, but it's just noting it like the one and done ownership comments of like, it's like, oh, this is a positional course. Like nobody plays a bomber, and then you just get there at like a 5% guy and they're going out and crushing it or something. So it's like, there's so many other things to it that you can do, but that really does seem to move the needle when it comes to ownership. All right, let's talk about betting breakdown. I know you threw a bunch out there this week, something you feel good about. You don't have to give them all. Obviously, that's what your Discord is for, but maybe pick one or two if you've got it and talk through it a little bit, and then we'll get to the leverage lane for us at the end.
You know all of them. Do you have one that you would like me to talk through?
Yeah, I'll get you to do it because you brought it up earlier. So there was a reason why you clearly said England and Matt Wallace.
Yes.
But I think you can use that to, the advantage of saying like where you got a lot of the information that you're probably using from. There's a lot of good stuff on those charts. So maybe talk about the Matt Wallace one. And you went pretty aggressive with it, meaning like you went on a lot of different angles to make money on this and really make money if you get it right. So go ahead.
Yeah, I did a ladder bet on Wallace. So top 40, top 20, and then a couple each ways as well for the outright. It starts with like basically the entire modeling process that I use all points to Matt Wallace. So first thing we're doing is we're using Course Fit to create expected strokes gain projections. We also create, an estimated event to event volatility and round to round volatility so we can simulate the tournament. And that gives us a win rate and things of that nature. So from that, Wallace already looks really good because number one, he's really volatile. And number two, he's been very good when in contention, the few times he's been in contention. And actually number three, like you can make a very strong case that this is the best form his approach play has ever been in his entire career. It's been extremely strong. 4 of his last 6 events, he has had the type of iron play spike that can win golf tournaments, including stacked fields like this one, like a major championship. So from just a pure modeling standpoint, he already rates out as one of the better bets of the week, both from an outright perspective and top 20 and top 40. Where things get really, really cool here is, as I mentioned earlier, like I found 3 predictive splits for the Open Championship: performance in major championships, performance in windy conditions, performance in difficult conditions. His wind splits are pretty good, but I want to focus instead on major championships and the difficult condition splits. Majors, he's been quite good. He hasn't been in contention a lot, but he performs over his baseline. He gains strokes a lot more often than he usually does. Typically, he gains strokes in 54% of his rounds. In major championships, he's gained strokes in 64% of his rounds. So that's nice. He also, in major championships, has done a pretty good job of, actually, he's neutral in both spike rate, what I call boom rate, and blow up rate. So how often are you gaining? I think it's like 3.3 and losing 1.7 strokes. Those numbers were data derived, so I don't remember the exact numbers. But point being, plays really well in major championships compared to his own baseline, which is the way that I like to do these types of splits analysis. In difficult conditions, he's a rock star. His strokes gained above expectation differential is the highest in the field at 0.57 strokes per round. That's slightly better than Scottie Scheffler's 0.56 per round. So we know difficult conditions often helps the best players separate from the worst players, but Wallace, it also just makes him a much better player, because think of like who he's been throughout his career, right? He's a bulldog scrambler type. So the more holes where par is a good score, the better for Matt Wallace. I think that's like the driving force behind this split. He's gaining strokes in 69% of his rounds in difficult conditions. For context, players who gain strokes in 69% of their rounds in general, let's rip off some names here: Tyrrell Hatton, Ludwig Oberg, Colin Morikawa, Bryson, Victor Hovland, Lowry, Sam Burns, Russell Henley, Patrick Reed. Like that's Hideki Matsuyama. That's the quality of player that gains as often as Matt Wallace gains when he's playing in difficult conditions. So you add those splits on top of the fact that the model already thinks that, hey, he's a good bet based on just like who he is and the form that he's in right now. He becomes a really, really intriguing bet across the board. And also at 1%, a pretty interesting DFS play at 6,300. Probably not quite as good of a DFS play as a bet, because the pricing makes it so like Matt Wallace probably belongs at this type of price. If everyone was priced where they quote unquote belong, I would say, look, Matt Wallace is one of the best plays on the slate, but because he's kind of priced where he belongs, and you can just go up $200, $300, $500 for guys who are like $2,000 underpriced. Sure, Matt Wallace is not as good of a DFS play as he is a bet, but still interested to some degree there for sure.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you too, because it's like, your Hogard guy this season, like Nikolai Hogard, where it's like 6,600. He's only $300 more, but would you like him more in DFS? And you're saying, like, again, Wallace, obviously a top 40 does well and could play and make the cut and all that matters, but it's from the betting perspective that you really like him, and that's where the ladder and all that came from. But in DFS, there's just guys right there, slightly more.
Well, yeah, and to that point, like Wallace at 6,300, you can get at 175 to 1. You go up $500 to Tom Kim, and his odds are 55 to 1. So, the betting market shows that these guys in the 6K range are just priced in a spot where they have no business being priced. The outright market does a better job of kind of showing where everyone should be. And it shows that some of these like 6K guys should be in the 8Ks. Wallace maybe should be 6,500 instead of 6,300 or something like that. So yeah, certainly not as good of a DFS play as an outright bet and as a top 40 bet and top 20 bet. But I do still have interest in him. Like if you see my lineup come Thursday morning and Matt Wallace is in there, you shouldn't be shocked. It's just like all around, that's predicated on the fact that I think he'll be 1%. If he were 5%, I'd be playing like any of these other 6K guys instead.
Back to the one and done conversation for a second. Take Bryson. First made cut and goes all the way after Bright. The last time Brandel called out somebody like this, wasn't it when Brooks went on to win the major and put the clown nose on him?
Maybe.
Do you remember that back in the day? And then Bryson,
yeah, but Brandel's called out Bryson every major so far this year as well, and so it hasn't helped him yet.
Said he's chasing Grant Horvat and not Rory and Scottie. So
so good.
Yeah, pretty solid stuff, man. Yeah. Brandel's like Stephen A. Smith kind of, but it's like at least he just makes takes.
He's Stephen A. Smith in the sense that like he likes to say provocative things, but he's not Stephen A. Smith in the sense that like he actually really does know his stuff. He just takes that knowledge and then gives you some rage bait from time to time.
That's what it is. You nailed it there. That's exactly what it is. Cause it's like, he actually knows it, but he needs to go that way with it instead of just giving you the goods. It's like, that's the difference. But give me a quick opinion just on some of this, like the guys above, like Siwoo, Minwoo, Tom Kim. I'm looking at some of them and I know there's guys below too, like JJ Spawn and English and other options there. Is there anybody in that lower 7K range? Because one thing that I was going to say back to like when we talked about like leveraging it, we did talk a little about Cantlay and Reed. I don't know if they're on your radar, but you have Cantlay, Reed, Rye, Spieth, Neiman, who finally showed up at a major for once, literally for first time ever once. And then you've got like Alex Fitzpatrick. So is there anybody from like that Reed, Cantlay, or multiple that stand out in that bottom 7K range? I think it's pretty interesting. Yeah,
the two stand out the most to me are Reed and Spieth. Both of them have fantastic splits. Jordan Spieth's splits are like shockingly good. He might have the best splits across the board. It's basically either he or Wallace, to be honest with you. So I do think Spieth is very, very interesting at like 5%. And then from a pure talent perspective at 5% ownership, like go down to 6,900 Hideki Matsuyama. I think that's, as you mentioned earlier, like that's very much in play as well.
Yeah, I struggle with like Reed versus Cantlay versus Rye. Like that'd be like, again, if I was looking at that area and saying, okay, all three of them project very similarly. When you're looking at your builds, it's like sometimes you want to take, again, I'll let some things trickle in like that range, but also it's like if you were hand building a lineup and picking out of that range, it's hard to really pinpoint. But you said Reed has better splits than any of them.
Yeah, Cantlay splits are really bad. So given his ownership, I think that's a fairly straightforward fade for me. But Rye and Reed both have good splits. Reed's are really, really good. I think both are good, very good plays, in fact.
Yeah, especially like finding it when these greens are just going to roll. I was thinking like Patrick Reed at harder courses. I know it's different history now versus like back in the day versus now, but it's like a guy that, has those hands around the green. If he even goes over and then he can make the putts when the time comes, very competitive, like all that stuff that dials in. So I think that's pretty interesting there from that perspective. I like some of the other guys in the, the one problem is like Shane Lowry. You could play Sam Burns, basically the same price, but Shane Lowry still has to play on Sunday. What are Burns' CPS? What's Burns' CPS?
It is very poor. But he's been so good. And the last time he was in contention was a major championship, and he played well in contention. So I think he's a pretty solid play. You just have to be okay with the fact that, he kind of wasn't expecting to play this week and certainly wasn't practicing last week when his baby was born. But I think he's still a very solid play. I probably prefer Henley at the same price, but both are very good options.
Might just play Lowry as like the worst guy. Whatever happens. He's got the hands around the green. I think his splits look okay as well. So Yobi Trice, real name, no gimmicks, says, how do you feel about Nakajima's recent form? He showed up on the broadcast last week. That 18th hole shot that they let us see was super nice, where it dropped in there tight and pretty solid game. I was surprised that he was, again, it's young in golf years, but he's 26 or 27, I think, when I looked it up. 26, I think, when I looked it up, because for the longest that we talked about him, and I know we've been doing this forever, but it was like the amateur and the top amateur up and coming, and he's going to be something. And obviously he still has tons of time. He's 26, but I'm saying, this would be the time to start shining. Last week, pretty good result for him.
Yeah. So the interesting thing coming into last week for him was that like all of his success was putter based. And so it was like pretty easy to dismiss him. Instead of regressing with the putter and maintaining the ball striking struggles, he did the opposite. He maintained the putter, and all of a sudden the ball striking was there. Especially, he had one of the better driving weeks of his career. So that's why he finished third at the Scottish. And I think he's an interesting play. I would kind of group him in there with Matt Wallace in the sense that, like, ordinarily, if everyone was priced well, I think he'd be a very kind of solid contrarian option. But given the fact that there are just so many crazy underpriced players, that it's just probably not worth it. And I would say the same thing for Shakira as well.
Yeah, a lot. I mean, people go back to the well. If you played guys last week too, maybe you can do that. But Stump said that Nakajima helped me get a 44-44 ticket. I saw a bunch of people in your Discord had those tickets. Same over at Chip Nation. A lot of people racked up, some of them for their first time and are going to get to play in this big mega. I'm tilted. I know you are as well. It's like the one where, of course, it's like the best structure of the year. It's like 1 million, 250, 200, 150, 100, whatever, and all that. And people talk about it, but it's like that's the discipline that you have to have, right? Like, I'm going to be playing way more than 44-44, but I would much rather play my game as opposed to that one lineup for the week. So I'm going to play max the $25. I'm going to play a bunch in the $5. The 254 max is nice with 30K up top. The $200 with 100K up top. The King of the Desert satellites. There's a $44 that pays like 25% of the field and still has 20 grand up top with a pretty average structure. So it's like, I'd rather just mix and match where I don't feel like super solid around one lineup this week or any one strategy. So that's my game. I know your game is a little bit different, but maybe that's a good segue. What is your leverage lane of the week? What are you going to roll with here?
I'll also answer Aaron's question real quick. Thoughts on Scott Vincent? No interest whatsoever. Like, he's been all putter. He's never done anything whatsoever in a major championship. 2 majors, both missed cuts. No interest there at all. Leverage lane this week. I had 2 options. I'm going to go with the latter of the 2 that were in my mind. And I'm going to say leverage lane this week is find a player 5% or less. And this gets back to the point that I was making earlier in our kind of like ownership discussion of what the effect is of the really soft pricing. And to me, it's that you're able to find genuinely good golfers with very real opportunities and probabilities for success who are just so much lower owned than they ever are otherwise. And so I'm going to take advantage of it that way. If you find someone that low who has real upside, is that much of a separator, it allows you to eat some of the chalk if you want. Like, if you think, hey, Siwoo Kim is just priced way, or projected way too well for someone under $7,000, you can very easily play Siwoo Kim because you know that you have a very, very severe separator in your lineup. So somebody under 5,000 is my leverage lane, or under 5% is my leverage lane.
All right. Now I just got a big decision here I got to think about. So before I do my leverage lane, it's funny because my leverage lane is in this, but 2v2 real quick for you. Would you want Rory and Lowry, the buddies, or would you want Fitz and Xander?
Rory and Lowry, Fitz and Xander. Assuming that I have separators elsewhere, I'd go Fitz and Xander because I want nothing to do with Shane Lowry.
All right, because he still has to play on Sundays, which is insane.
Yeah, if on Sunday he comes within 4 strokes of the lead, you're going to get double, triple coming up right after that. So you better just be prepared for it.
The initials SL stand for Sunday loser for Shane Lowry because it's been very bad on Sundays. We've checked it out many a time. The sample size is getting very big, by the way, too. It's not like everyone has a bad Sunday here and there.
Yeah, it's a huge sample, and it's even bigger than the contention performance score captures, because the contention performance score doesn't capture the Sundays where he plays himself into contention from way back, and then despite being like 7 under through 10 holes playing perfect golf, goes bogey triple once he got himself into contention. So yeah, it's unbelievable. I've never seen like anyone this allergic to the lead.
I love this one from Ryan. No water on the course, but Lowry will still find someone's beer on Sunday somehow, some way. It's crazy. But my leverage lane is going to be a guy this week. It's going to be a starting point for a lineup, and we talked about it very little. The one mention was that he's probably going to be the most overlooked up there, and it's going to be Xander Schauffele that I talked about. It's very surprising to me. We rarely get any tournament, let alone a major, where Xander is going to be like bottom 5 of the top 5 that are going to be up there. So it's like when you look at the Scottie, Rory, Tommy, Fitz, Xander setup, then you add in, and they're the 5 I'm saying, but then you have like Hatton and Morikawa and Robert McIntyre down there. And then even in between, you've got Rahm, Ludwig, Rose, whatever people go to. I think starting a lineup with Xander is pretty interesting. Like I said, you could put him in with the Matt Fitz and some will say that's the pivot and do it that way. But I just think using Xander is a great spot this week. The guy just dominates in all majors. His game can fit all courses. I don't really care about this, that, or the other of all the other things. I just think it's a spot where we are seeing him at least go somewhat overlooked. So to the original point that somebody asked earlier, can I fade the entire 10K range? I get it. It's only the very next guy, but it's like that is considered. I mean, you are fading the entire 10K range to start with him, but there's some very unique builds. Like I'm just throwing this out there because I'll have a ton of different variations, but it's like if you go Xander, Rahm, Ludwig, Xander, Rahm, Rose, like just using 3 as an example. You can go 2. You can go Xander, Rahm, get a couple of different 8K guys that others aren't playing, and then land and not even need 6K guys. And these have potential made cut equity that takes out from the win equity. It's not like Xander in most projection sets won't be far behind on that win equity and that capability. And honestly, if Xander's in the mix on a Sunday, it wouldn't surprise anybody at a major. It's Xander Schauffele. Right. Does he finish it? And remember, he couldn't close. Then he closed 2 majors. Now he's back to not being able to close again. It's just part of that. So I think there's some interesting stuff there, but I like Xander this week for my guy. Any comments on that or anything else you want to add before we get out of here?
His like top 30 streak, whatever it is in major championships, is probably the only thing that's keeping him above 15%. Like if he didn't have that, I think he'd have a chance to really slip the crack down to like 10, 12%, something like that. So yeah, I like this call. And I'm with you in the sense that like, I don't care that his last couple events haven't been great. He's still Xander Schauffele. Same with Cam Young, right? He's struggling. Now, Cam's struggles have been a little bit longer, and they're a little bit more kind of geared towards the things that he has struggled with in the past. Like when Cam was, not Cam yet, it was because, number one, he didn't have the putter, and he had very inconsistent iron play. Well, his approach play, it's still good. He's still gaining, but it's nowhere near what it was when he was winning golf tournaments early in the season. And he's now really kind of struggled with the putter for the majority of the last 3 months. So now that he's not playing a ton, so that could help explain it to some degree. But yeah, so like I'm probably a little bit more worried about the recent struggles for Cam than I am Xander, but I view them as very similar plays, and I think both are definitely under-owned.
Yeah, Aaron Smith said, like, I'm not necessarily saying to go this route. I'm talking about starting with Xander, but like, so that could definitely fit the build as well. If you want to have like a Xander Young start, it's just very unlikely to land in those, decision-making spots of the 6K range and that sort of thing. Or maybe it does, and you get more 9Ks and 8s in there. It's dependent on how you want to play it, but at least I would feel somewhat comfortable with that. I also think, putting Xander into a lineup with like a Fitz Xander, I think most people, once they go Fitz, decide, okay, I'm dropping down now. It's going to be Hatton or Morikawa or Hovland or whatever else it might be. So
yeah, and I think like the type of lineup that you want to do a Xander Young start is when you're dead set on I'm playing Siwoo Kim, I'm playing Tom Kim, I'm playing Jaco Neiman, right? Like if you're already eating a lot of chalk down there, yeah, now you need to get different up top, and that's the way to do it. Is not like you can't get different enough up top with just one guy who's 15%, but you can find those really unique combinations of players up top, and obviously Cam and Xander qualify.
100%. You already let the people know where they can find him. Anything else you want to add before we get out of here? Anything else with your Discord?
Yeah, I'll just tease the fact, like Tambo kind of teased it a little bit earlier as well, but posted some NFL DFS roster construction stuff in the Discord a couple days ago, and like I don't recall ever being more excited by some findings than what I found there. Some really cool stuff, and it was only part one. It all revolved around stacking, like what size stack do you want? Do you want to bring back? If you're double stacking, do you want them to both be wide receivers? Should one be a tight end? Should you use a running back? Things of that nature. Part 2 is going to be more ownership and price driven. It's going to be some really cool stuff. So definitely recommend checking all that out. I think the best way I can describe it is it just simplifies the process, right? Like instead of guessing whether the things you're doing are good or not, with this data, cut and dry, I am doing winning stuff. And over the long run, I should be a winning DFS player with this information. So can't wait to use it this NFL season. And if you get in now, you will be at a pretty sizable discounted rate throughout the entire NFL season and forever.
Yeah, check that out for sure if you guys haven't. If you want to check out ShipItNation.com, go to the site. It's just the $49 banner at the top. That'll get you a full month. So it's a ton of golf still on the way. We've got MLB coming back after the All-Star break. We've got all the other sports that you see there up at the top to go with it. So check it out. ShipItNation.com. Hit me up at ToeTagginTambo if you have any questions about Ship It Nation, DFS Mastermind, or the Big Guy event, which is coming up next month in Vegas. Would appreciate all the support there. That's going to do it for this one, guys. Good luck in the final major of the season for Alex and for myself, ToeTagginTambo. Let's ship it.